Hello, good morning. Today is Saturday, March 22nd, uh, round two, day one of March Midness, I guess, as the kids are calling it these days, based on the results so far. With me, as always, is John. John, let him know.
Good to be here, Zane. I can't really argue with the been pretty trouble. I think that's probably what we should have all expected. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more chaos going into weekend.
Yeah, and I think we all sort of knew going in that this looked like a very chalky first few rounds, which hasn't been the case always. I think really only like four or five um, Vegas dogs uh, won in round one. And I think there's only like three or four true seed upsets, like McNeese State, CSU, those sorts of teams. I don't really count 8-9s or like 7-10s as upsets. I mean, they're basically the same caliber of team. So yeah, we got basically chalk the first 2 days, which is kind of a nice reprieve from the madness, but also at the same time, it's a little bit boring to watch that much basketball in 2 days and not get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think when we talked about this last time we were on, but I do think that some of the twos are vulnerable. I think some of the threes are vulnerable. So I think we might see a little bit more madness over the next couple of days. And then, who knows what happens in the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight. But it's certainly not. Uh, we don't have any Cinderella stories, at least not any that are fully developing yet. So
No, not at all, and I don't think we'll have any this year either. I mean, like I said, the best chances for true Cinderellas would be McNeese and Colorado State, but I mean that's the only two teams you can hope for to make a run like that.
pretty much, and
And
the irony of it, of course, is that I think McNeese is going to close around a 6 point dog, and I think Colorado State's going to close around a 6 to 7 point dog. So it's not as if you're seeing these super inflated lines, or I mean, these would be upsets, obviously, for Colorado State to beat Maryland or McNeese to beat Purdue,
yeah,
but not the sort of that would send shockwaves.
yeah, it's not a 14.5 point dog. I think I saw where CSU opened as a 7.5 point underdog for tomorrow, which
Yeah,
feels exactly right. I mean, we could lose by four, we could win by two. It doesn't. It's going to be a close game. I feel like if we play like we did in the second half, I think it's very much a game. If we play like we did in the first half, we lose by 20 plus to Maryland. But
yeah, and,
I've got
and
a parlay, two parlays, the same parlay because I'm an idiot sometimes. But I've got CSU to have beaten Memphis in round one and beat Maryland in round two. It's like a 550 or a 650 advantage. So I'll probably hedge a little bit on Maryland to sort of counteract that bet because I mean, deep down, I gotta assume Maryland's gonna win that. But it's always nice to have bets like that you can really root for.
absolutely. And like I said, Maryland is one of those teams that they don't foul much, which is good, I guess, for them because they only go about, like I said, 6.5 guys in their rotation. So
Right.
they could be vulnerable if they got into foul trouble. But CSU isn't really the kind of team to draw a lot of fouls either. So yeah, that being said, the talent disparity is there, but CSU probably has the best individual player on the court tomorrow. So you never know.
Yeah, Neat Clifford. I'm not saying he's going to be a lottery pick next year in the NBA, but he's definitely going to be on the fringe of a lottery pick next year in the NBA draft just because he can shoot the three, he can get inside and rebound. He's a great passer. He's a really good team player who has, you can tell, a lot of, ball knowledge. And I think he's going to have a pretty decent career in the NBA, at least a long career. I don't know how good his stats are going to be, but I think he'll be a, a 6 man or a 7 man guy in the
Yeah,
NBA for a decade,
yeah, I
which
think
is
he'll
about
be
all
a
you
good
can really
rotation
hope for.
piece.
So, that's sort of our recap of round one. Not much to talk about, clearly. And I think the last time you and I spoke, we had mentioned Survivor, NCAA style, which is a completely different mindfuck than NFL Survivor. Not that it's any easier or harder, but it feels like it's much more of a challenging task. So I was unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, in Vegas right before the tournament started. I just got back a couple of days ago, and turns out you can't do Survivor when you're in Las Vegas. I can do it in Colorado just fine, but I guess there's no market there in Vegas for it, so that kind of sucks. So I don't have any entries in Survivor, but I've been, you know, giving John my thoughts, sort of talking through different picks to make each day. Ultimately, John's got the final decision, but it's always nice to run stuff past people who, are into the same things you are. So with that, you survived all three entries Thursday and Friday, and you've
I
got
did.
three entries left for today and Sunday.
Yeah, we went Wisconsin on Thursday, Kentucky on Friday, and I think in retrospect, that turns out. I mean, obviously, getting any two teams through to the weekend is always good. Uh, but Wisconsin is now a 1 point favorite in the second round against BYU, and Kentucky is actually a 1.5 point dog in the second round against Illinois, which is kind of exactly how you want it to set up. You essentially want it to be such that the teams that you pick um, are immediately eliminated in so that your path is clear as the tournament marches on.
Right.
And we're set up pretty nicely because those are the two shortest lines in the entire second round. So that's a good thing. Not to say that I'm necessarily going to pick on the other side of those two games over the next couple of days, although we'll get into more of that. But can't really complain about the results so far.
Yeah, I know. I got a text from you on, I think, Friday morning. It said, Wisconsin survived. And I was thinking they won by 20 fucking points, John. They didn't survive. They fucking dominated Montana. Uh, but
Yeah,
I've
that
gone through the board for today and tomorrow, and I know two plays that I really love, and I think uh, you might feel very similar to it. I think we can probably agree there's 5 or 6 teams that can win this whole thing, and it's basically all the ones and twos. Um, Maybe there's a three that sneaks in there, and I've got some futures for exact number of seeds to reach the final four. I've got exactly four, exactly five, and exactly six, which leaves myself a little bit of wiggle room in case like two twos get in. Um, or if a three sneaks in and we get 3 1 seeds. But we're not there yet. But for me, I think my favorite two plays this weekend are Texas Tech and Maryland, which are on opposite days. And I think that it just makes a lot of sense. I don't think either team is winning the championship this year. And I think their matchups are, I mean, they're playing an 11 and a 12 seed, respectively. And they're both favored by at least, I think, 6 or 7 in each game. I don't think there's really, in my eyes, I don't see much more value than that.
Yeah, the difficult thing with Survivor, we've talked about this before, is that there's a fair bit of game theory involved because you want to pick teams that you can then pick against or otherwise just avoid or expect that will go out essentially as quickly as possible after you've chosen.
Right.
And so I think that obviously as the tournament progresses gets much more difficult to do because you're balancing the current value on the line versus the future value that it has, and the lines get much tighter. In fact, I don't think there's a single. I'll have to go back and look at this. I can do that right now as I'm talking to you, but I'm not sure that there's a single double digit spread. Oh, I take that back. There is one. It is the
Well, let me
Duke
guess. Let me
Baylor.
guess. Let me guess. It's got to be Duke.
That's correct. They're laying 12 against Baylor. And, nobody's picking Duke in their survivor pool this weekend
Of
for
course.
obvious reasons. Most people are on Duke, or a plurality of people anyway, are on Duke to win the whole thing. So,
Oh yeah.
in the event, it obviously gets a lot more difficult just because the lines get much tighter, the matchups get much tighter, and you're always balancing current versus future value. So, I agree with you on the Tech pick. I do actually think Tech is capable of beating St. John's in a Sweet 16 matchup, which gives me a little bit of hesitation.
Sure.
And
Sure.
I also think that Tech has a tricky matchup today against a Drake team that is notoriously very difficult to prep for, and who plays extraordinarily slowly. The number in this funny. Tech is actually laying right now 7. They opened in some spots at 9.5, but the
Whoa.
total is 127, which is the lowest total on the board by a fair bit.
Let's
And
take the over and ride all day, baby.
yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. I mean, Tech is in a tricky spot if they are not hitting the three against this
Right.
Drake team, because possessions, you're going to have a game with 64, 65 maybe possessions, and the lower the number of the possessions,
Sure.
the higher the potential variance in the game. And if Tech has a cold spell, they could find themselves in a real rock fight. So that being said, I do think they're probably the best pick on the board for somebody in my position with the Wisconsin Kentucky sequence so far
Yeah.
for today. But because I have
I do
three
have one more
injuries,
play for you too, potentially, which we'll get to.
yeah, go ahead. Why don't you give me your other play, and I'll tell you what I'm thinking in terms of my allocation for today.
All right. So this is my pick for today as an option, and I think it's a really good one. It's Purdue McNeese State.
Yeah, that I think is another one that I actually think that Purdue is probably going to be the most picked team in
Yeah.
most Survivor leagues today, just because it's a 4-12 matchup. But the funny thing is that number right now is sitting at 6, and it's sort of vacillated between 5.5 and 6.5, and I feel like it's probably going to close right here around 6, right at the outer bounds of 2 possessions.
Sure.
But yeah, I think it's a good pick. I'm probably going to avoid it today and hope like hell that McNeese wins, and so that there's going to be a fair bit of attrition
Yeah.
uh, in the
Yeah. If
pool.
McNeese and CSU win, you're on cloud nine going into next week.
Yeah, those would be really really good outcomes. Um, so no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put 2 entries on Texas Tech, and then put 1 entry on a much sort of riskier play. And I'm going to put the 3rd entry on BYU. Um, it's always good if you can pick against the team that you just had in the next round. And so if I can get a BYU pick through, that leaves me so many more paths going
It
into
does. I think
360.
that is definitely a risky play. I think Purdue is probably a safer choice without a lot of chance to advance, to the Elite Eight or Final Four in this. But if you can get BYU through, yeah, you're in great shape. I mean, I expect there to still be 90+% of Survivor entries alive after Sunday night,
Hey,
but
it's definitely, unless we get, say, Arkansas, McNeese, Drake, um, you know, uh, you know,
New
uh,
Mexico.
Colorado State, New
Yep.
Mexico. Like unless one of those teams pulls off the moderate upset, there's not going to be very much attrition out of the first weekend at all.
You have to
And of
know
course, the
that
odds
too,
are
you know.
that one of those teams is going to upset, and it's just about you're just playing a game of Minesweeper eventually, or essentially just trying to avoid being on the wrong side of that upset. So
100%.
I'm pretty comfortable with Tech being the right side for those purposes. And if we get complete mayhem, but BYU somehow gets through, then that's the best path to scooping. Right now, the pool that I entered. Let me pull this up real quick.
Yeah, the risk reward for BYU is relatively huge for you.
Yeah,
You
there
know,
were
it could definitely be a loss. I'm not going to say it's not, going to be a 100% winner, but I think the value there is probably worth it.
So I entered the DraftKings $200 entry
3 times, right?
pool 3 times. There were a total of 1,140 entries, and there are still
1,100. Let me guess. 11, 15.
there are 946 remaining.
Still, that's
So
ridiculous.
it's still a ridiculously low attrition rate
You
through the
expect you
full
expect
first.
like half of the entries to not survive the first 2 days.
You would, yeah. I think traditionally you're looking at something like 35 to 40%
Sure.
attrition, and in here we have like a little bit. Well, let me do the quick math here.
Another 25 to 33% after Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, yeah, that would be the idea. So
Yeah.
right now we've only lost. Um, we still have 83% of entries alive,
Yeah.
and so like I said, I think today you're going to see. You're going to see a very large number of people selecting
Tech, Purdue,
Tech,
Maryland.
Purdue. Well, Maryland plays tomorrow, so I think
Oh,
the
well, I'm
four.
sorry. Yeah, I just meant this round. Sorry.
Yeah, I think Tech and Purdue are between the
One,
two of
two.
them going to combine for at least a 50% share of the entries, and then you could probably see a fair number of St. John's, maybe some Tennessees, maybe some Texas A&Ms, and then as you get down the board, people making riskier plays like I am with the one entry on BYU. So
100%.
um, my hope is that if I'm going to Tech one BYU, that the upset is on the Purdue McNeese State game rather than the Tech Drake game. Um, and it also wouldn't hurt to see Arkansas beat St. John's. And I thought about going with St. John's. I mean, really, what this boils down to is I have 3 entries, and I need to allocate those 3 entries between 4 viable choices, given the path that I've sort of set out thus far, and that's Tech, Purdue, St. John's, and BYU. And right now, I'm with 2 on Tech and 1 on BYU. And that was my first kind of gut instinct, and I didn't really kind of get in trouble when I go against that and overthink it. So I do think that's where I'm going to land today.
No, I enjoy it. I love it. I think those are all the right plays, even though you might go 2-1. I think you're at least guaranteed two there, unless chaos ensues. If not a chance to go 3-0, and that BYU is super huge for you. So hopefully, I'll probably bet on them and root for them as well,
Awesome.
just to get the vibes going, right?
And then Sunday is, I think, actually a little bit easier. And I think like I said, my thesis coming into the tournament is that I kind of wanted to fade the 2 seeds.
Yeah,
And I was not very high on them. And so Tech and Iowa State are actually 2 teams that I've got to advance to the Elite Eight in most of my actual bracket entries, which
sure.
sort of raises the question, why am I taking Tech here? And it really is just a matter of like Survivor's a little bit of a different format, and I just have to balance, a lot of competing,
Yep.
considerations. But I think tomorrow, if we can manage to get these three entries through today, tomorrow is going to be a shove on Michigan State. Particularly now that New Mexico has beaten Marquette,
Oh
which
my
I
gosh,
did
dude.
not expect.
Michigan State, it might be all three tomorrow.
I think Michigan State is going to be all three entries tomorrow. Yeah. And
I
so
would also love to sprinkle a Maryland in there, even though it goes against CSU. But I can understand going three straight up on Michigan State because I don't think they've got a chance to win. And I think they're going to blow out New Mexico by 15 to 20 points tomorrow. So
I think New Mexico is in deep shit
they are.
tomorrow
I
for
mean, it's just
sure.
like CSU. They're both, playing sort of out of their comfort zone now. They're with the big dogs, and those two teams are not big dog teams.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think, and also it's one of those things where I think without question, just as Purdue and Tech are the two that will combine for, I think at least a 50% share of total entries
Yeah,
today, I think tomorrow you're looking at Maryland and Arizona probably combining for, another 50 plus percent share of total entries. And I
100%.
would love nothing more than to see a sequence today. The ideal sequence for me, essentially, just to put a bow on this, is we get McNeese State over Purdue today, and we manage to get Colorado State over Maryland and Oregon over Arizona tomorrow. And if that happens, and my entries actually survive, then we're probably talking again before the Sweet 16, sometime next week, with, you know, maybe 30% of the field remaining rather than 83. So,
100%.
yeah.
No, I think that's right, and I think I'm on board with your choices. Let me go log into DraftKings real quick and throw the money down on BYU for you,
Very nice.
and we'll I'm sure we'll be talking throughout the day today and tomorrow. And then, as you mentioned, we expect to be back sometime middle of next week to talk about Survivor, the bracket in general, and overall thoughts after rounds 1 and 2. So with that, I'll see you at the window.
All right. Go Ramily.
Go Ramley.
Take care, man.
You as well. Peace.